Imagine that you are living in a nice city neighborhood with relatively clean air. One day you wake up to the news that city officials are planning to build a waste-to-energy incinerator less than 6 kilometers from your apartment. You know that the city needs to deal with its trash problem, but you feel for yourself, your child, and your neighbors if an incinerator spews out poisons in the air that you breathe. What would you do? This is exactly the situation that residents of the Chinese city of Guangzhou found themselves in 2009. One thing they didn't do was despair or act individually. Instead, they formed interest groups, and eventually the groups joined together with other anti-incinerator groups across China in an advocacy coalition. The Guangzhou fight against the incinerator presents an opportunity to explore the advocacy coalition framework, one theory about how advocacy can change government policy. The residents in Guangzhou formed a group called Green Family and talked to local government officials and the media about their concerns. When the government insisted they would still build the incinerator, the residents began protesting. They donned surgical masks and t-shirts with the words, "Refuse toxic air," and they placed banners on police cars with the words, "Anti-burning." After 4 months of citizen activism, the local government suspended building the incinerator for a year and announced that it would seek public input into developing waste management solutions. The activists realized that if they didn't want an incinerator, they would need to find other solutions to the waste problem. But they needed help to come up with solutions, and they needed to understand how to influence local government waste policies. Here's where the Advocacy Coalition framework comes in. Rather than work in isolation, Green Family, which renamed itself to Eco-Canton, joined forces with other organizations fighting waste incinerators to form China's Zero Waste Alliance. Today, Zero Waste Alliance is a nationwide network of over 80 Chinese environmental groups, businesses, and individuals engaged in policy advocacy, capacity building, and grassroots mobilization related to waste reduction. By joining this coalition, Eco-Canton was able to garner expertise about waste incinerators and anti-incineration campaigns, and thus become more effective in policy advocacy than had they tried to advocate on their own. So what exactly is an advocacy coalition? Simply put, advocacy coalitions are groups of policy participants, including NGOs and other civil society groups, academics, and government officials, who pool their resources and expertise to influence policy. The coalition members communicate through social media and annual conferences and often coordinate their advocacy activities. For example, some coalition members might stage protests while others offer their scientific expertise, and still others draft new policies. According to the Advocacy Coalition framework, coalitions have 5 dimensions: policy actors, shared beliefs, coordination, resources, and stability. Let's cover each of these dimensions briefly. First, policy actors. Here we are not talking about Hollywood actors or actors on Broadway. Rather, actors are individuals or groups who attempt to influence policy. They act to try to change something. Second, belief systems refer to people's core beliefs, for example, about environmentalism, as well as their beliefs or preferences related to particular policy options like an incinerator versus recycling. Third, coordination. Coalitions vary on how tightly they coordinate their activities, such as supporting each other's sign-on letters to public officials or holding joint workshops or demonstrations. Fourth, pooling resources such as money, expertise, and public support enable the coalition to have more influence on policy than single groups. Finally, stability. Because it often takes years to change policies, coalitions need stability. This means being persistent and resilient in the face of initial failures to change laws. Depending on where one lives, the coalition opportunity structure, that is the political context in which decisions are made, varies. This context includes the degree of consensus needed for major policy change, how open the political system is, and the degree of social conflict. In China, the government has been relatively open to citizen participation in environmental issues, thus making it possible to form green coalitions. To recap, We can envision advocacy coalitions as a group of policy actors who share beliefs and who coordinate with each other to leverage their collective resources over multiple years to achieve a policy goal. In the case of waste management, the policy actors included government officials, residents associations, NGOs, and scientists who coordinated with each other to leverage their expertise and connections over several years to oppose the building of incinerators and reduce waste not just in Guangzhou, but in other cities across China. Advocacy coalitions occur within countries and internationally. I first became familiar with the U.S. Climate Action Network through my work with member organizations like Elders Climate Action. But I recently learned about Climate Action Network International with over 1,900 civil society organizations in over 130 countries collectively taking action to fight the climate crisis and to achieve social justice. If you are considering volunteering with a climate organization, you might want to ask what coalitions the organization is part of and how effectively the coalition members jointly leverage their resources. You and your organization will be more effective in influencing policy change if you apply advocacy coalition thinking rather than going it alone.